Name ring a bell.
Does he always come in on his wife's name or something?
Sometimes he did. Right, Lindsay. Right.
Yeah, that's what it was.
Right.
And I was like, I don't know who Lindsay is, but I guess
Yeah,
they were present.
I think maybe whenever we were doing our meetings on Google Meet, he was like, I'm not gonna create an account, I'll just use my wife's, and I think he just kept it. So yeah.
Does he have a hyphen?
No.
I don't think
Just
so.
2 words?
Yeah. I don't think so.
And John
I assume somebody would have told me before now, but.
doesn't have an H in it.
Oh,
It's Jon.
And I think he has a detached bicep.
So,
He was having surgery, yeah.
Who? What?
Talking about John Tier?
No.
Oh.
We know what you're talking about, for sure.
I was like, wait, he's here though.
Never mind. I thought you were talking about
John
something
Ross
else.
Henderson.
No,
Came in and
no.
left.
No.
Maybe he's knocking on the door right now. I don't know.
No, the guy from police is.
Oh, yeah, I don't know. Who's on our committee from police now?
Josh Keir.
Is he
Is it
still-
okay?
Is he still there?
See, I'm mixing up names.
Mixing up J's. Yeah.
Mixing up J's and. But yeah, he's having surgery.
Josh is?
Yeah, the detached.
Oh,
Bicep.
gosh. Yeah.
I don't know what happened.
Wow.
He does like
Yeah,
karate
is
or something,
I was
doesn't
gonna say, if he does any sort of
he? He does.
strength and conditioning
Does
or
he?
anything like that, especially, that's not the first time I've heard of someone having a road.
Hey,
How are y'all?
we don't have
uh-oh.
Look who they
table
dragged in.
space.
Good to see you.
It's good to be here.
Oh my gosh.
Up and running.
It's the
Hi.
alternative. Oh, gotcha.
How are you? I'm good, thank you.
All right. Well, we can kick things off. I think that we'll start hearing about the Connect Conway project from James and Finley. Craft and Tolt is a consultant on this project. Just full disclosure, I have looked at it. So we'll start there, and then we'll open it to their business as we are able to get to before 7:30. So if you guys want to take it away.
You want to start? Either way. Let's start with the route. Actually, first, you take a moment. I should have brought like a pointer. Sorry. It doesn't work on those screens. Oh, good point. What I'll start with is to talk about the goals of the project. So, we have a relatively robust network of bike lanes in Conway. Not nearly what we'd like, but better than a lot of cities our size. Pretty much the same for sidewalks. But we don't have a lot of trails. And so what we're looking to do is, of course, this is more than anything else, well, I should say, this is, the intention of this, first and foremost, is a grant application for something called the RAISE grant, which James could probably talk more about the specifics of the grant than I could, but it is a large pot of money that the government offers for grants such as this, we're a little less than a year away now from the application deadline. It's a very competitive grant, and so we want to put a lot of thought and effort and planning and design into it before we apply for it. The goal isn't to have a full, complete set of plans, but we do want to have fleshed out the details, gone through significant public involvement, which is obviously where this board comes in tonight, and we want to make sure that it's well vetted. So one of the important things about this is that it is both transportation and recreation. We have recreational trails in town right now that are great, and they do serve some transportation purpose, but they don't serve. There are large portions, large swaths of Conway that are not served by those trails. The advantage of the trails is that everybody can feel comfortable on those trails. There are plenty of places in town that a cyclist like Peter or myself can ride to. I can get almost anywhere in town from almost anywhere else. I feel comfortable on my bike in a bike lane or in the road, as long as I'm not on a state highway. But what we're looking for, to quote James here, is the 8 to 80 crowd. Yeah, go ahead.
I was gonna say real quick, you can take your mask off. I just realized you still have it on.
Oh,
You're speaking.
would you guys prefer that? Probably easier to hear me, but I don't want to offend anyone.
Put it back on.
Thank you very much. So anyway, we are looking for transportation. We understand that there are still plenty of people that, again, like myself, that are commuters or road cyclists that might feel more comfortable in the road and would probably find a more direct route on the road. And we're not suggesting that that's inappropriate or that they need to use these paths. What we're trying to do is connect parts of Conway that don't have connection right now for users that only would feel comfortable on a sidewalk or on a trail and wouldn't feel comfortable on the road. So that's the premise. And the other thing I'll say is we're looking at about a $25 million grant. So it's a huge potential investment in Conway. Again, it's very competitive. There's no assurances that we're going to win it. The advantage is that if we lose, and I hope that we will win, I have faith that we will win, but I don't know that we'll win. If we lose, we will have spent this year putting together a fantastic document that we could then use to apply for other grants. Maybe some of the grants would be smaller. Maybe we might need to take pieces of this document to apply for other little grants, but the fact that we will have put so much work into this is going to be of benefit, obviously, if we win the RAISE grant, but even if we don't, it will have been, I think, a worthwhile endeavor. Yeah.
Could you just give me a feel for what $25 million might look like?
We'll zoom out for a second, and I'll give you an overall view of the route, and then we'll go into the details. Okay. So,
I'm not turning the streets off.
Yeah, that's helpful. Thank you very
That
much.
way you get an understanding of just how.
And I'm going to stand over here so you can see just a little bit better.
And I can move too.
Oh, you're fine. James doesn't need to see what I'm doing. Okay, so this up here is the sports complex by Lower Ridge. And it weaves all the way down to the 6th Street overpass. Anything that's colored is a potential connection. Some of them are primary connections, some of them are secondary connections. I'll talk more about that in a minute. But we're talking about miles here, which, we're doing, not even a mile of Stone Dam Creek with the amount of grant money that we won over a 3-year period. We cobbled together 3 grants, and we're doing not even a mile in Stone Dam Creek. This is miles, all the way from Don Owen down to essentially Home Depot, and all the way over to UCA. And then, so what we're going to do is we're going to connect East Conway. We're creating a trail network back here along Little Creek and connecting it to downtown and to UCA. And then what that will do is it will connect it to the existing Cucker Creek Trail and the existing Stone Dam Creek Trail. So, the advantage of this is that those 2 trails currently are not connected, except for via on-road facilities. And it will create another whole trail network here on the east side of Conway, which is pretty well underserved from our perspective of alternative transportation at the moment. So this is where a good portion of the infrastructure is going in, and then again connecting it to downtown UCA and connecting it to the 2 other trails.
And one thing I'll jump in and add, with the transformation of this, the previous grants were called Build. This year it's called Raise.
Yes.
And with the change in the administration, there's a change in priorities. And so with the new administration addressing climate change and climate resiliency, racial equity, addressing equity of economic opportunity, and transformative technology, these are all things that are priorities. And so when you look at the census tracts where we have the lowest economic status, when you look at the areas that are more diverse within our community, these are the areas where that has that impact. And so that is also additionally one of the reasons why we looked at that. As we go through this, we don't want you to think that, hey, This is all down, definite, defined. That's why we're talking to you. There's a certain amount that we can move things, change things, but it's not from a perspective of why are we talking to you in that sense. We genuinely want to hear thoughts. We want to know what people think, and it's always better when you can tap into more brains and more minds and ask people questions. And so we genuinely want your input to help us shape, should we go a different direction? And hey, every single time we've talked, we've thought about some kind of a tweak in every group that we've talked to. So, sorry.
Thanks, James. No, that's a really good point. I'm going to dive into the details on this just a little bit more, but before I get started, pay attention to the legend and the colors. So everything black is a primary route, so with just a couple of exceptions that I'll talk about, those are all going to be off-road, well, not off-road, paved trails, side paths, things like that. A secondary connection could be, in some places, it could be a trail beside the road. In some places, depending on traffic, if traffic is relatively low, it might be an on-road connection. And then green are areas where we really need your help, whether you want it or not. Those are areas where we know we need to connect the dots, but we don't really know exactly how we're going to get there. It may be because we've got property owners we need to talk to, or maybe because we need input. And then the red is just an area that is adjacent to the route that we've planned, but there's already some sort of facility there. There's a lot of that is not shown in red. We didn't show all of it because some of the secondary connectors we've got shown are bike lanes and sidewalks, and we do have a relatively robust connection of that in Conway. We didn't want to show it all because then the map starts to look a little bit muddled. We may show it all when we apply for the grant, but for the purposes of tonight, we didn't need to do that. So please can zoom in and maybe start up here at Don Owen. We know we want to, one thing that I have enough experience with in grant applications is to know that when you're talking about trail networks, especially if the purpose is to provide transportation for users, they want to see connections. They don't want to see you just take it towards East Conway and not end somewhere. They want to know where you're going. So Don Owen Sports Complex is a really good place to end it, kind of on the east side, northeast side of town. We have a relatively good idea of coming along the dog park here. We don't yet know exactly how we're going to weave through the complex, but we know we want to get there. This is going to be also, so partially because the city doesn't own all this property, so a lot of this is going to be one of those areas where it's going to be kind of, depending on landowner negotiation. But we've got a relatively good idea. Once we get here, so this is an example of the red connection where we've got good sidewalk and bike lane here. If somebody wanted to go this way, and it's worth showing, but we're not planning on rebuilding any of that. As you come south, we're planning on building a paved trail and coming probably across the road here at grade. There are going to be some, obviously, grade separated trails, and grade separating the trail from the vehicles is always better. But it would blow the budget really fast if we did that at every location. So I think it's safe to assume that at an absolute minimum, anywhere we've got an at-grade crossing, we would put in a crosswalk and a flashing beacon. It's probably even more likely that we would put in some people call it a hawk signal or a pedestrian hybrid beacon, which looks more like a full-size signal. That's what we have at Salem, where Tucker Creek Trail crosses there. So that would be a protected crossing. So this is kind of where we pick up Little Creek. Little Creek, we would have presumably a trail that runs along Little Creek. There is a little bit of difficulty here because this facility right here is built pretty much all the way up to the creek. So that's why you see this funny jog around this facility, because there's just not room right here to do it. But we're paying attention to the fact that we want to provide some secondary connections through here because we want to get to the school, which is here, and we also want to provide opportunities for the people who live in these neighborhoods back in here. Recognizing that once you get kind of into the neighborhood, it starts to be more comfortable for users to be in the road. As we go south, we'll continue along Little Creek. If anybody has any questions about anything specifically, feel free to ask. As we continue south along Little Creek, there's another at-grade connection here. We did look at it. Unfortunately, I don't think there's enough room under that bridge to come underneath, but that would be a great place for a pedestrian hybrid beacon. And then we connect to another park. So far we've connected 2 parks and a school, so we're really checking a lot of boxes. Coming along Little Creek again, coming south.
That's a pretty, is that Stephen Morgan that we just crossed?
Yes,
That's
that's
a pretty
exactly right.
busy,
Yeah, that's,
that's a pretty busy crossing right there.
It is, and that's why I think that would be a great location for a fully protected pedestrian hybrid beacon, meaning that when a pedestrian presses the button, the cars get a red light and must stop.
how much are we talking about difference between one of these beacons and an overhead crossing?
I wish I could remember what the Dave Ward pedestrian bridge costs.
Well, the Dave Ward pedestrian bridge is really kind of a redonkulous example. Unless it's not.
It's not because of the grade. So it is fancier than a typical pedestrian crossing would need to be, but the problem is it's got to be ADA, well, forgive me for calling it a problem, it's got to be ADA accessible,
Sure.
and you've got to get high enough that a permitted truck can get under
Yeah, I was
it. So,
just curious, like if we were
it
talking
takes
about an
the-
order of magnitude or.
yeah, well, you're talking about you're talking about millions probably
Wow.
per
Okay.
bridge.
2.5 probably.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, versus, not
Because
250,000.
I have seen in the past an awful lot of, really chain link crossings, but I imagine those are from a time when.
Well, Hendrix is a good example.
Yeah.
And, they're not particularly happy with the way that looks. But just for an order of magnitude idea, when I design a road and cost estimate that, the cost is generally per mile. That's how RDOT, there's a standard number I can use per mile to decide how much that's going to cost. For a cost estimate for a bridge, it's generally per square foot. So there's a real big difference.
That is an order of magnitude.
Yeah. But $2.5 million for a bridge, $250,000 would be a really expensive signal.
Okay.
If you didn't need any other associated roadway work,
Okay.
which is typical for pedestrian hybrid beacons. Sometimes a full signal can cost $500,000, but no, it's normally other roadway work.
And that's not to mean that, that you couldn't have some type of facility in the future.
Sure.
Yeah.
There are areas like on, the Razorback Greenway that started as one type of crossing and have evolved to others, over time. It could be an underpass, a different kind
Is
of
an
underpass. at
underpass
some
cheaper
point.
than a bridge?
Well, what about an underpass?
It is if there's grade. Unfortunately, the issue is
Can't
if you can't go under the existing bridge, then you've got to rebid and elevate the bridge, and so then you're at the same order of magnitude of rebuilding it.
Yeah, I had assumed going over was cheaper than going under.
In this case, it would probably be cheaper to go under, but you're still looking at building a new vehicular bridge, which per square foot is more than a new pedestrian bridge. It would be shorter because you don't have to go as far, but we're still looking at least $1 million versus about 1/10 of that probably for a pedestrian hybrid beacon. Good question, though. Thank you.
How close is that crossing to that roundabout? I can't really tell.
Pretty close.
It's
Yeah, I worry about that. That's gonna.
Back up some people.
Yeah, I just worry, and people aren't still. I just had it this morning. The person in front of me, blew through. Someone waiting at the crosswalk at one of the roundabouts on Prince, and I stopped because I saw them, but they didn't.
Right.
I worry people are going to be blowing out of that roundabout and
Sure.
won't stop.
Well, you want it far enough that somebody can complete the turn and be facing, the stop sign. We could push it further, for sure. What we don't want is that students, there are students that walk down this way and might want to access the trail and cross, if we push it too far, they're gonna use this instead, and I'd rather they use this.
That's
So
a good
there's
point.
a,
Yep.
there's
Yep.
a balancing act
Yeah, I
here,
like that.
too far, not far enough. But that's something we certainly, that's something we'll look at when we get into the design phase. I wouldn't necessarily use this as a gospel for where the crossing would be, but it's a really good point.
Well, and it would actually be like west. Like
Yeah, because we're on
20
this
feet or
side.
So, yeah,
So
it'd
it's
be
probably
kind
going
of
to be more
those
like
figures
right here.
Oh, I mean, that's a huge difference.
Right, right.
Yeah.
It'd be like 110 feet. I'm looking at the legend or the scale bar down there.
Yeah, that's
It's
probably
like-
like
it's
20
like-
feet right there.
Because I mean, if they're traveling, just say they're blowing through there at 30 miles an hour, how many feet is it going to take them to stop when they see a pedestrian? Even I know you're going to have the flashing lights and all the fancy, but you know, I'm just realistic. How long is it going to? How many feet are they going to need to stop to
Well,
let the
that's-
pedestrians or the cyclists cross?
Don't have my green book with me, unfortunately.
I don't mean you have to do that in real time. That's how my brain is working on this.
Yeah,
Okay.
this particular radius right here is sharp enough that I think that's enough distance for a 30 mile per hour stop. There are some roundabouts where you could make the exit at 40, and that would worry me a little more. There's a much bigger difference between 30 and 40 in stopping distance. But yeah, we're at 150 feet here. That doesn't really concern me a whole lot.
South.
But again, you're asking questions that will definitely be vetted in the design phase. It's a really good point.
I like the proximity to the Theodore so I think that would be a huge
Yeah.
upgrade and safety feature for that community over there.
Yeah, I had a conversation with them years ago about that question, and like they were just like, "We can't."
Yeah.
Like, and so getting that.
Yeah, that would be huge.
So if we come south just a little bit more, we're planning to bring this trail. No, it's all right. Planning to bring this trail to. Let's see. Now this shows a crossing here and a crossing here, which we may do, but we have also talked about crossing here and then being on this side with the primary connection. The advantage of that is you've got to cross the road somewhere, and there's not room here, just barely not room here to go under. If we crossed here, then it would provide another probably pedestrian hybrid beacon, a safe crossing with lots of clearance for cars to see it, so that the school children can get to the park.
Can you remind me what the blue means? Like, what's the actual situation on
The
the
blue
ground?
means secondary connection. So the planned route right now is the black, and then we would also build some sort of trail so that the school could get.
I'm sorry. Do
could
we
get
know
through.
what the situation there is, or is the plan to put sidewalks in if they aren't there, put bike lanes in if they aren't there, or are we just using the existing?
The idea is it's totally gonna be context sensitive. I mean, in this situation, this might be something as simple as a sidewalk. It's just, you got kids that are in this neighborhood that obviously want to get to the school. If you were walking from here, you have to go all the way around the world and come over here. Why couldn't we just put a little sidewalk that comes over here and comes in the back, right? So it's gonna, in an instance like this, yeah, it might be that we put in bike lanes that go, along here. It might be that this is a side path. So it's just gonna depend on the context of the individual.
Because I often see sidewalks that just dump out into, for example, parking lots and stuff, and that's obviously not acceptable. So that's why I was trying to figure out what the existing infrastructure was there.
I don't think we're depending on, unless there's a sidewalk here, and I don't think there is a sidewalk right there, but I can't remember. But unless there's an existing sidewalk there, we're talking about taking this to the front door. Now the back door, we haven't quite figured that out yet, because what we haven't done yet is talks enough with the superintendent of the school to know how a back connection might be used. We don't know what doors the kids come out of, and we also haven't worked out how exactly it would, what property it would be on or anything like that.
Do you have a feel yet for whether the new superintendent is cooperative, let's call it?
I haven't. No, I don't. But sure, I'm gonna assume so.
Everybody loves a sidewalk, kid.
So as we come south, good news is there's room to go under Oak Street. And we will provide an at-grade connection so that if somebody is up here, they can get to the trail. But this will come under Oak Street, still on the west side, and there's plenty of room behind all of these businesses here to be behind, off this parking, between the parking and the trail. This green here is green largely because we know we've got easement width more or less through here. If you were to go look behind the Home Depot, what you'd see is a berm there. And the current concept is to be on top of that berm, which is honestly the only disadvantage of it is that we're really not sure how people that live here are going to feel about that. Because you literally can see down into their, you can see through their back windows. We stood on this berm and it kind of feels a little bit like an invasion of privacy. So, there's going to be some negotiation with some of these people. We may need to plant some more trees or build a taller fence or who knows what. But
what about coming behind the businesses too? I don't know how some business owners would feel.
So I talked with some of Isaac's associates at Craft and Toll about this that have got a little more experience than I do about building facilities like this adjacent to businesses. Their experience has been that typically the businesses like it because it brings more foot traffic, which brings sales. It is possible that they won't like it. And if they don't, then we'll have to take that as it comes. Of course, we want to. The reason we're talking to you guys before we talk to Home Depot is because we want to make sure this is the route we like. And then if it is, then at some point, obviously, we're going to be negotiating with these businesses for easements and right-of-way and things like that.
Now, the owners of this are the C family in Bentonville or Northwest Arkansas. In a previous iteration of the grant application, that family has been talked with. There is basically the little creek through here is in its own parcel that there's been discussion about them wanting to donate that.
That'd be awesome.
Donate that for that. I don't. Who hasn't been talked to at all? I think is Home Depot, and so. This is all up in Home Depot's business.
Yeah, Home Depot and Logan's are the two wild cards here. We talked about, we're kind of all over Home Depot's property here, not in a way that impacts them from a parking perspective or anything like that, but we're certainly right up against their back door in their space, and then kind of the same along here. Now from there to there, you can see we've kind of got two routes shown. The preferred route. If you've been to Logan's, you might notice this access drive here that comes into the kind of Logan's essentially, almost like Logan's back door. There's unfortunately not room. This is side path. This is a paved trail behind the back of the curb all the way to about that point right there. And then from that point, we just have no choice but to be in the road. So our preference would be to buy an easement in the roadway. Going up and down this, thank you, James. There we go. Essentially, if you were to imagine taking one half of this road and putting up delineators and making that all pedestrian and cyclist space, which would mean that the other side would become entrance only or exit.
I was just about to say,
because there's not room for it for both ways. Probably Logan's would prefer entrance only. My experience is that businesses just want their customers to get there. They don't really care when they leave. And so they might potentially, if we pay them for an easement, allow us to do that. Once we get up here, then things get a little easier. If they are not willing to do that, then our only other option is to go through here. And this actually would be an off-road, not off-road, but you can see there's just enough green space through here where we could make it happen this way, but it kind of feels like you're in the middle of it. You've got a crossing here, a crossing there, a crossing there, and then there's a tight spot where this wall is only, I think, about 6 or 7 feet from the back of the curb. So this is not ideal, but it could work. Once we get here, we've got, I think, 10-foot wide side path going around this way and that way, actually. And if you zoom out, the side path goes to there. And what we've got shown here, this is a little bit, so the plan right now is to actually continue. There's bike lanes and sidewalks on both sides of this thing right now. The plan would be to remove the sidewalk on one side of this and widen it to make it a full side path.
That'd be great.
All the way to Harkrider. This is where we get to another difficult point.
Can we
Yeah, go
just
ahead.
for a moment
Yeah,
there?
of course, of course.
Is the blue, do I remember correctly, that's where the aquatic center at one point was
Right
going
there.
to?
Right there, I think.
Okay.
Isn't that right?
That's yeah. There's another meeting going on tonight. It's out at the Expo Center that there's displaying concepts for that. That's one of the sites under consideration is that Axion building. Another is down on South German.
Which is one of the reasons for this blue line here. We obviously would want to connect to that. We're also showing connection, this way to connect to back to Oak Street.
They have another splash pad over there off 6th Street.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's exactly right.
Yeah.
This is an existing trail, thankfully.
Huh.
And potentially another connection up Ingram, which I think would probably be an off-road connection, side path. So as we get to Harkrider, the plan is, this is 6th Street, so that's currently a signal. So that would be a relatively safe place to cross. Pedestrians could cross at this signal. They'd be on the west side of Harkrider, which is the school side. Take them up. Now, bear with me for a second. Take them up and then through the school. Now, you've not talked to the school about this.
This is St. John's.
In
Yes.
front of the church, like, it looks like it's.
Yeah, so that's the church right there. So that's the ideal route.
Say good luck on that.
I agree.
What happened to Bruce Street and all that, and on south? Bring the map up so we can look down.
Yeah.
south.
Yeah, let me tell you why.
What happened?
Let me tell you why. Have you ever crossed Harkrider at Bruce Street?
Yeah.
Constantly.
Just so that it-
Yeah.
As a pedestrian or a cyclist?
Cyclist.
Was it fun?
No,
Wait for the
but
green-
to me,
wait
it's
for
a
the
lot
green
better
light.
than trying to turn left on. I guess you're already on the left. On the
Yeah,
side
you don't
right
have to
there,
go
but
back
still.
up. I mean, we did this as a group. Isaac was with us.
Did Shelley not tell
We do
you
it all the
about?
time. We do.
Yeah, Shelley hurt herself here.
Shelley didn't tell me anything.
Okay.
I don't think Shelley tells me. You tell me.
If we cross here, we're just crossing. We're crossing. One of the problems here is that you've got the railroad to contend with.
Right.
When you kind of have to add in to the crossing, it's pretty hairy to cross here. Crossing here at this existing signalized intersection feels a lot less hairy. Once you get to the west side of Harkrider, even if we can't go through St. Joe, again, the problem is the railroad here. There's an existing pedestrian connection across the railroad here that we could utilize. This is a significant advantage because we potentially then may not need permission from the railroad. Permitting from the railroad is even more difficult than permitting through RDOT. It's like, yeah.
So just so you see,
So-
you can see the shadow of the steeple. The church is
Yeah.
right there closest.
Certainly
to the
can.
railroad.
So let me tell you what the alternative is. The
Could you route
alternative
behind?
is to come up to College and around.
How come you can't go to the south of the church building, like right around the back?
Through
It's
here?
just-
Cemetery.
Oh, I see.
Somewhere.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah, the cemetery's right there.
And the
Potentially,
school playground.
Maybe you could come through here,
Or
but
like just right, I mean, like if you zoom in, James, on the parking lot, go up just a little bit. I'm sure you all have looked at this, but I just worry they're not gonna want the crossing to go right in front of the church and with all the weddings and everything.
Yeah, more than likely, that's
But-
something that just hasn't been corrected on the map. I think from the feedback that we have heard thus far, which y'all are definitely confirming as well, is the idea of going along here. The church wants to close Chestnut Street, and that might be another opportunity for us to just
Yeah, that's
slap
what I
it.
was gonna say. Go right up through there instead of,
that could work too.
yeah.
So slap some trail there, and
Yeah.
you got a little awkward sidewalk connection right here, but then you got some room over here.
There's the potential for this to be a benefit to the school as well.
Yeah.
You
I
think-
think they wanted it. I mean, I don't,
Yeah.
it's
You'd
just a matter of
think, but-
where's the best spot. Because, I mean, I'm sure they'd love it for the school and for people biking to work on Sunday morning or walking over from the neighborhood.
Also, you can kind of see it here. There's fence, nice brick and wrought iron fence along here, which we've had the idea of continuing to separate, because they're going to want some separation between the school building and the side path along Park Rider. But again, this is a very sensitive area. We plan to approach the church/school and involve them critically in how this works. The one thing, to Peter's point, we initially had it crossing down at Bruce Street, and there were maybe a dozen people that went on a walk on it and walked that route, and everybody pretty much. I was actually in the truck getting water, but I think
It sucked.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no way to.
It's
Oh,
a
no,
horrible,
we do it all
it's a
the time.
horrible,
I do too.
horrible-
We
do it all the time.
So I do too, and you have such nice bike lanes there on that new
Yeah.
section of
That's the
road.
thing, is
Right.
that's a lot less busy, this new section is a lot less busy than that up there. I mean,
I have never ridden that. You ask me how many people cross there, I cross there all the time. I have never crossed at 6th Street and take a right onto
No.
Harbor.
And I think the important thing to think about is
That'd be crazy.
I think it's important
I
to
crossed Harbor.
to remember that obviously y'all are one type of user. If I were to go out there with my 9-year-old son, there's no way I would ever use it, because I just don't want to be that close to the traffic. It feels incredibly uncomfortable, and if there's somebody that wants to use it in a wheelchair,
I agree with all that.
getting up over that is
But also, you
next
wouldn't
in
want
line.
to take your 9-year-old at 6th Street.
That's
right,
what I'm
at
thinking.
the- At the other spot that we can't see right now, up higher.
so. What's your proposal?
Well, what originally I saw a long time ago from the chamber was a bridge over that.
That's exactly what I was
Bridge
like,
over
if
the
ever there's a
railroad and
place to
Park Road.
actually spend some money,
That's the problem.
that is the place. I just wondered if we could go over the train as well, without involving them, that'd be awesome, but.
Yeah, so now you're talking about more than $2.5 million.
Right.
Yeah, I figured.
More like
yeah.
5 at least.
Yeah.
I would. That just is just taking a
Yeah,
stab.
because
at it.
otherwise you're, I don't know, maybe you could shorten it, but I assume you'd have to go over the whole mess.
Well, the thing is that the trail. The bridge would end about there
Yeah,
because it'd have to be so tall.
yeah.
What about
Um,
if you bring the picture down just a little? So currently, St. Joe has a school on the right side of Park
Right
Rider.
here. Yeah.
That eventually, in their longer term plans, they want to get on the other side.
Right.
But that's not gonna happen probably in the next 10 years.
Uh-huh.
But if you did a bridge where you're proposing to make that turn, so if it.
A bridge. Here.
Right in there,
Oh,
And then
interesting.
you might actually get support from St. Joe, or even further up, closer to the
Yeah.
school, then you've got access to that school,
You're proposing a bridge just over the highway, obviously not over the railroad.
right? But see, then you've got a
That's an interesting.
The problem is the
pedestrian
bridge.
cross right there.
The bridge. There's nowhere for the tail ends of the bridge to go if we do it here. It's actually more feasible down there
Okay.
than it is up here.
Couldn't you
Because
do
you'd have to
a-
buy all these houses to do that, and then it would literally the St. Joe would have wall. It would have as the bridge goes down to grade. I'm not even sure if you could make it before you get to the railroad, but if you could, this would all be walled off, so you couldn't get from one side to the other unless the
Yeah,
whole
that's
thing was a
exactly right.
bridge, and then it becomes a $10 million bridge.
Yeah.
So
You're
that
talking about
road, there's a road right there on the south side of the school, go
There.
up one block,
There,
yeah.
yeah.
So is that the same situation?
You potentially could buy maybe just 3 houses and do it there. Maybe.
You're talking about a very specific type of
A
bridge.
different approach. Why can't you do one that goes like that? You ever seen? I've gone.
It's not ADA accessible, and the feds would never
They build 'em.
approve it.
Yeah,
I've
they
been
build
up
them all the time.
in other places in the country, so I guess they're pre-ADA or something.
Well, there-
Generally, they have an elevator. What you're talking about? Normally, there's
Right.
steps that go up, and then there's an elevator.
Oh no.
No?
No.
Maybe
You
so.
just run the ramp along the sidewalk.
Maybe they're
Well, like an
pre-ADA.
Hendrix does that, right?
and then
Don't they
it-
turn it?
hangs 90 degrees, you come across the street.
So you could run it along Hartrider.
Yeah.
Yeah. The problem is RDOT already has plans to widen Hartrider, and they're already at front doors of businesses on both sides. So you're talking about another 20 feet or so that you're
Yeah.
going to need minimum, and it just doesn't.
Is
exist.
RDOT actually ever going to do that? 'Cause
Yeah,
we've
we
been
gave
talking
them
about that
$3.5
for
million.
12
It's on the
years.
stick.
That could have been. Sorry. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, you.
I was just wondering time frame on
Yes.
widening Hartrider and what does that look
I cannot get a time frame out of them, but
It's when Red Lobster comes to Conway.
Yeah.
if I had to guess, shoot, I'm on the record. I don't know. It's gonna be at least 3 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
They're designing it right now.
Yeah.
They've started the design. That's about.
Well, does
all I
that
can
piece
say.
going up Hartrider,
Say again?
the piece going up Hartrider that you have drawn, I guess,
There.
I guess that doesn't interfere with.
No, it does. It does. So regardless of what we do, whether it's there or here, regardless of where we cross,
Yeah.
we're going to have to involve RDOT in it, because if we cross here, this already wide section is going to get wider, because the improvement is basically from the south side of the intersection.
I see your point in if you have pedestrians, because if we cycle, we can still go this route if we want to. But you've got a lot of people
This will continue to probably be the preferable route for a cyclist.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That would be the route I would go as a cyclist because of these 7 feet wide bike lanes here. Again, this would be this would be a side path. This would be a 10 to 12 foot wide concrete side path with an additional 4 to 6 foot wide vegetated buffer next between the side path and the back of the curb. The idea is to try to make this as comfortable as we possibly can.
Yeah.
I will also tell you that the original grant had a bridge here.
Huh.
And Marcia Guffey, who was our previous grant administrator, said, "You've got to take the bridge out." That was the first thing she said about this project. She said the feds are not paying for this bridge. They don't build pedestrian bridges anymore. The Florida collapse had a lot to do with that.
Huh.
That really got their attention. So I don't know. That was the grant administrator's recommendation was to take the bridge out. There's lots of money available for rail grade separation to keep cars from conflicting with trains. There's not a lot of interest in providing rail grade separation just for pedestrians, because of the fact that it's about 10 times more expensive to build a pedestrian bridge as it is to put in a pedestrian hybrid beacon or something like that. The reason to put in a pedestrian bridge is not necessarily safety as much as it is that you just don't want to stop the cars. That was a lot of the reason that it was put in on Dave Ward, was because the RDOT was not going in. I wouldn't support it either, because there were already, if you've driven Dave Ward, it's hard to get good progression on Dave Ward. Adding another signal in there that was just red all the time was really going to muck things up. And we got a grant for that, thankfully.
This too. You feasibly couldn't make this harder, because you've got a creek coming through here, a railroad, utility lines, a 5-lane street that's going to be widened, and elevation change.
Yeah.
And it's just like, come on, throw us a bone. There's literally it's insanely difficult from an engineering standpoint, right?
Oh yeah, it is.
It's just, I wish it weren't so, because it obviously.
Yeah, the other thing that makes this difficult is that, it's worse than it looks like it is. Actually, the railroad is about 4 feet higher than the road itself, which pushes the bridge up 4 feet, which pushes the extent of the bridge out by 5%. I can't do the math, but like 100 feet on each side. So it's big bridge. It's a really big bridge.
All right.
Out of curiosity, I'm just throwing this out there and we can move on, we don't have to, but I'm like, what about just running the damn road over top and cutting off that connection?
Running the road over?
Just taking Bruce straight up and over the whole mess.
Now you're talking about that's the whole grant.
Okay.
Good, I'd love to do it.
Yeah, that would be cool if we did that.
Yeah, I'm like, that would get us right out of everything. Okay, cool.
Yeah. But I mean, I think what we need to make note of is that these crossings are something that are concerning to all of us, and we need to make sure we sweat the details. And you know, I'll run some numbers on pedestrian bridges.
Well, and then, I'm sorry, I didn't
No, it's okay.
but then you've got, the way you've gotten it, you've got it up there, you've got a lot of houses, you've got a lot of people that would actually access it up there more than you would down here
Yeah,
with the businesses.
yeah, that's very true.
So,
Well, and another thing that I want to point out is that, you know, at the beginning of this, I talked about trying to connect dots. This is about connection. And so there's an advantage here of connecting to school rather than being down here where it's an industrial complex.
Yeah. It's those folks down south that I wonder about, but that's later.
Down south where?
Like south there, southeast, I know we've got
Louisiana,
some,
you know.
yeah, all of that stuff.
Yeah. Well, I think the way, you know, so I'll say two things. We have won a grant and should start soon on a sidewalk from Robbins to Bruce.
Sweet.
That'll help a little
that's
bit.
wonderful.
And as this develops, I expect that there will be a back connection to allow people to go this way. So they'll either be able to use the sidewalk to go to Park Rider, or they'll be able to get out this way. Both of which are going to provide much better connection for my neighbors down here.
Yeah.
Good point. Thank you. All right, so as we get once we get over the nightmare
However we do.
railroad, then let's see. I'll talk about this for a moment. This one kind of is exciting to me. This is a secondary connection that comes up to downtown. So this is Locust. There's room on the west side of Locust to widen that sidewalk and come up through. Thank you. Come up Van Rompel to the mini roundabout here, and then you're on Markham Street, which is something that I really wanted to connect to. Markham Street gets to Hendricks. There's another box check. Pie in the sky, I don't think it'll fit in the budget yet, is we continue this thing over Sieben Morgan.
Yes.
We'd all like to see that bridge replaced. And then we're connected back and we've made a loop.
Yes.
Don't know if that's going to fit in the budget, but it's something I'd really like to see done. But at a minimum, we'll take it up, hopefully, to Hard Rock.
From a road standpoint, do you know if Markham, say the road is so nice there where they've redone it, and then you've got like, I don't know, quarter of a mile, whatever, where the road stopped, and it's just bumpy.
You're talking about Markham Street?
Yes.
Okay, so that project should be let within a few months.
Okay.
And we'll continue it all the way to Spruce. And so the whole thing's going to look the way it does now, except
very
without
nice.
all the orange fencing.
You mentioned,
All right.
Locust, Finley. You
Say again?
mentioned Locust, back down to Locust. You're gonna pave that anytime soon?
That's
Yeah.
same time as Harprider.
Really? That's a city street. That's your job. It's
Yeah,
not on the list soon?
well, so I had to do some horse trading with Conway Corporation. We've got a bunch of downtown street work we plan to do within the next few years, all of which requires Conway Corporation to put a bunch of stuff underground.
So we're gonna wait till last time.
And they told me I could do I've got almost the total of like a mile of roads that I just need to overlay in here, but they've got a lot of utility work they need to do. They're gonna be spending more money on that than I am. And they said I either had to wait on all of that for about 4 years, or I could just delay Locust until about 2024, 2025. So that was the agreement. They're focusing all of downtown first, and then Locust will come. I think they're gonna do the utility relocation of Locust in 2024, which will allow me to start on 2025. It's on our radar.
We can see it.
It's on the list.
It's gonna be good
It's on the
someday.
list.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not like you're tearing anything up now.
Yeah. And interestingly, for the first time in my career, the most common Facebook comment has been, "Please wait until you finished a project before you start another one." All right, so I don't really love being on college, but I think it's worth it for a moment. You know, we're on this for about a block and a half, and then we get to Conway Boulevard.
That's nice.
So, CBC,
Yes.
another box check. We're on the CBC side of Conway Boulevard. There's plenty of room over there with a nice wide side path. Then when we get to this block of Conway Boulevard, that is, I think, 40-something feet wide.
I would love
Yeah.
to see that narrowed, honestly.
So the plan is to put Conway's first cycle track in right there. Just something I've wanted to do for a long time, but couldn't really find a place to do it. This is a perfect location to do it. A cycle track is a place where you've essentially got two bike lanes, but they're on the same side of the road. We probably won't call it a cycle track because it'll still be open to pedestrians as well. It'll probably be something like 14 feet wide, but it'll be an on-road facility that'll be separated by some sort of barrier, and you don't have to worry, since it's connecting two trail facilities. You don't have to worry about bikes crossing onto the wrong side of the road. Then we get to what's this road? South Boulevard. The reason we chose South Boulevard is because the right of way on South Boulevard is 100 feet wide. So James and I have had a couple of fistfights about what that's going to look like. We don't know exactly what it's going to look like, but it's going to be cool because we got lots of room. There's another school here on South Boulevard again. So, one of the things I really like about this route is how many schools we're connecting.
It is really cool, because you've already got, you've got CBC connected with Hendricks, just right there.
And then the secondary connection down to another park.
Yes.
And right close to UCA, 2 blocks up from UCA, there's going to be 2 religious organization
That's exactly right.
facilities right there.
That's exactly right. So when we get to UCA, we think we like, there has been talk about coming along this, this vertical wall ditch. Pretty much scrapped that.
Yes,
at this
it is
point.
behind the President's house.
And there's actually room, I don't know why, but the street gets wider about at the President's house. There's plenty of room to actually narrow that street up. It doesn't need to be that wide. And continue the trail all the way to Donaghy. Once we get to Donaghy, as you know, we're building protected bike lane and sidewalk on Donaghy right now. So we feel comfortable using that facility as it's being designed. It'll continue north. Bruce Street just continues as UCA, continues to grow. That has the potential of becoming a shared street someday. That may or may not be in this grant application, but it's a very pedestrian-friendly place to be. As you come south, then this is where we make the connection to Stone Dam Creek Trail, which starts right there. And there's 2 options for how to get to Tucker Creek. One is to weave through campus. That would probably need to be an on-road connection. The campus is just too dense really to provide a 12 or 14 foot wide side path through campus. So it would probably, the campus is relatively slow. It's not necessarily a place that feels unsafe for a cyclist or a walker. But there's another opportunity if we come all the way down here to weave through. I can't remember what this is called.
Nature preserve.
Yeah, this is a nature preserve. Thank you. Yes, they have an existing gravel path through here that we could potentially pave, and we've talked with President Davis about this, and he is in favor of both of these options in concept. Of course, we've got a lot of details to work out, but we may build one, we may build the other, we may build both, but again, it's going to be when we get into the weeds, obviously UCA is going to be at the table.
And one important thing, I'm pointing at Isaac because he's working on it, is this is going to be part of the regional greenway.
Oh yeah.
This Stone Dam Creek is going to be, that's the route, the Conway connection route that goes, and so this will continue on.
That's
And
great.
So this area becomes a big hub, big important spot.
Yeah, that's right. So, we converge here. We go north on Ferris on the east side of the road. The plan, I'm not sure why that's green. I think we got this pretty much figured out, although, feel free to disagree. As we get to here, this section will be on a side path. This is another section where, Ferris currently has bike lanes on it. But this is another residential section where it's a little bit tight. Everybody on the walk on it the other day agreed this would be a good location for another cycle track. So essentially what we do is remove all the paint, move the center line over, and put the bike lanes all on one side.
That'd be good, because we went through there, and depending on the time of the day, those cars try to pass. It is one of those, because it's wider, so they do try to pass.
Mm-hmm.
So it gets a little hairy.
And so obviously it would be, you'd have, just like with Conway Boulevard, you'd have the cyclists and pedestrians on one side of the road protected. Although here you do have, I think there's sidewalk there, so there's the potential actually in this section to have sidewalk for the pedestrians and then let the cycle track be just for the cyclists, which is even better.
How come you just don't go left there on Bruce? Yeah. Right down Bruce.
Well, so we are designing a roundabout here right now.
Right.
And so what we would take that into consideration. What a cyclist would have to do is, if they're on the cycle track, they would have to cross to the north and go through the roundabout on the trail. We're building a side path all the way around the roundabout. I can't remember if it's 10 or 12 feet wide. So they get up on trail and cross, and then once they get on this side of the roundabout, then they can dump back into the road.
I meant just go left on Bruce back.
Oh, on Bruce
Why
here?
just go down Bruce? That's how I ride it.
Gotcha. They do this. The cycle track is not going to start until you get north of the roundabout. So this has got trail on it. If somebody wants to be off of the road, then they would continue through the roundabout that way, or they would act like a pedestrian, so to speak, and go around the roundabout.
And down Bruce.
And down Bruce.
Why not do that? Why are you going up and down and around? Why not just go
I
down Bruce?
understand.
It's pretty narrow.
And Timberlake, there, right through that, right street there. He's got it focused in on
You want to take that one?
Yeah, I think the issue is, when you're adding a 12-foot side path in this, I mean, when we've seen drawings of it, you look at the aerial, you literally have cars parking over
it.
it.
Well, you don't need a side path through a subdivision like that, do you? It's like that's just a.
That secondary connection will still exist, but the idea, again, going back to this whole system, is that it is a network of wide, user-friendly side paths, or in some areas, cycle tracks.
8 to 80.
There's nothing, zoom back out if you will. There's nothing that prevents someone, there we go. There's nothing that prevents somebody from going this direction if they want to, on the road or on a sidewalk. But if we want to provide essentially a trail system, this is the way to do that. We've got a grant application out right now to build a 12-foot wide trail here. We're building that roundabout to accommodate it. There's room here to do it. I've gotten a grant to work on the design for this whole section of Salem, which is going to have side path all the way along it, and it'll be especially wide. Let me see to the south just a little bit. It'll be especially wide between Tucker Creek Trail and Timber Peg, so that if somebody did want to come this way, there's lots of room on the side path for them to get to the trail. So there's nothing that prevents somebody from going that way. And when we get to the point where we've won the grant, we've built the whole thing, we would probably sign that as an option. So this would be the route that they could take if they want to stay off the road. This would be the route that they could take if they wanted a more direct route. And to your point, we could show that as a secondary connection if we wanted.
I feel like the idea that you just mentioned on College Center, you know, I agree with Peter about just bringing Bruce straight across, but having a sidewalk on that piece of College, I guess that's in between Ferris and on my block over Salem here. That's a pretty tough area of College. I run through there a lot. And
right here?
The fitness center's right around the corner there.
Yeah.
And that gets a lot of traffic, and it's not extremely well lit, and it's a tough area for people to go through. So I do like the idea of putting in some better type of sidewalk.
This is a great example of what I talked about earlier on when I said that even if we don't win this grant, we're going to have a great document. And I have applied to build this once and lost, and I have refined the plans and applied again, and I hope to win it. But you know, if we get this whole document together and I can give this whole document to RDOT and show them, if you'll just build this piece, look, you're investing in so much, and it's a much easier grant to win. Incidentally, to connect to Donaghy. It's not shown here, but we may show it to connect to Donaghy, and then this way, the plan would be to bring the side paths to the south side and then continue to Donaghy. That's correct.
Right, DPAB approved that conceptually a couple
Yes,
years
that's correct.
ago.
That's
And I
correct.
like that. I generally don't like side paths on one side, as Finley knows, but there's not very many cutouts there. That's a perfect place to put one right there because there's not many intersections at all.
Which is the reason that I have proposed coming to the south side.
Yeah. Same thing.
You're right, exactly.
With that, so then from college to the backside of the fitness center there on the trail, is that not another secondary?
It certainly is.
Yeah.
That's an existing trail through there that we will certainly, show appropriately on a grant application. Yes, which is the purpose for showing this here, because we wanted to get to, where are we getting? I can't remember how.
Kroger. I'm like, please tell me it's Kroger.
Yeah, I was confused because it goes so far north, but yes, it's Kroger.
For karaoke.
Okay, we're almost done. Zoom back out. What have I forgotten? Okay. I think that's it. Is that it? Yeah, because we've seen it connected to both Stonedale Creek and the Tucker Creek Trail, so that's it.
That's it, Eric. That's all
Pretty
there is.
great.
That's my time.
Good job.
That's
How long will it take you to
exactly
build all that? They give you the money tomorrow, how long will it take to build all that?
2.5 years.
That's not.
Now, James, I know we're going over, but I really appreciate your time. I think what James is going to talk about is even more. I know it would have been hard to focus on what he's talking about without having context, but I think what he wants to talk about is even more important. So I would appreciate it if you wouldn't mind staying a little longer.
So, as Finley said, kind of the idea is to create this as Greenway, having multiple options, multiple users. And so part of that's important is thinking about amenities. What are the things that are critical to include on this? And so I prepared a little bit of, I guess you would say, a survey document. I've got pens over there if anybody needs one. But on this, we've got images of sort of things that you would include as amenities. And it's got a ranking system that basically is a A, B, C, D. A being most important, B being somewhat important, but this idea should not be included. Don't even think about it. If you're thinking about it in context of programming out how much money that we've got included in this, don't consider this at all. The next is it's interesting, but isn't a priority. The next is, yeah, we should include it if we've got the money. We definitely should include it if we've got the money. And then the final one is this has to be a part of this project. So there's about 17 images here, things like bike repair stations. So it's sort of a list of amenities, things that are, if you're thinking about this as a Greenway Trail project, what should be included. So I'll kind of pass this out. I can take one and pass them down, and just give them back to us when you're done. Any questions or thoughts about that? And if you want to, I don't want to talk to you and have you discuss and fill out the survey at the same time, so I'll let y'all do that.
Can I ask the bicyclists about the bike repair stations? Are those?
Yeah, I was gonna say theory project.
You can't imagine ever using them?
I don't find them particularly useful.
I've used it once, but I think they get used by looking at them. The tools look like they've been used. The pumps are repeatedly vandalized,
Yeah,
I
that's
guess.
why.
So the city is once again, I believe, Terry,
I've got I've got that taken care of.
the city's gonna repair them one more time. I used it as a bike stand one day to adjust my derailleurs, because you can put your bike up on there.
Right.
And work with it really nicely, so.
Right.
And I've seen them around other cities, so.
Can I just say, why is there never shade? Why is there never shade? Like that frickin' fountain.
No trees.
Beautiful spread, no shade. It's hot here.
Just keep
I'm looking at the
keep
seating picture and I'm just like, why is there no shade?
keep going to the
That's
next
what your
images.
pen's for, man.
Yeah. And if you want to say, hey, put shade in there.
I'm just seeing what the whole list looks like. Relative priorities there.
Yeah, so the first is a bike repair station. That, obviously y'all know about that. I do agree the lift is probably one of the most important things, because back when I rode, I always would carry my own tools, but didn't necessarily have a lift or anything like that.
Work on it. Yeah, drive-through.
Seating, the idea is this, having places to stop, seating along there, sort of convenient things included. Signature lighting. Part of the idea with this is using lighting to denote that you are on the Connect Conway Greenway. So that's part of the pattern language when you're progressing along the route. It's like, okay, I know that when I'm on this area, that these lights signify that this is something that we're on. Trail signage, obviously having signage along the way that lets you know where you are in relationship to the overall system. That's when I used to mountain bike ride. That was really important for me. Interpretive signage. These are things that you see a lot of this out at Two Rivers, of things that provide outdoor education. One of the things that thinking about with this particular amenity is that piece that's along Little Creek. Little Creek is some people have said, hey, why don't we create some toad habitat? Why don't we do some things to do riparian restoration in that area? And so that would be, an opportunity there, I think, with some things to provide interpretation of that. Trail gateways, these are things you see on a lot of them. It is more sort of an artistic expression, I would think, as letting somebody know that you're arriving into a destination with that. This is probably not something that you would include real often, but it might be in a couple signature places where you really want to highlight it. I love the fact that in this image there's a little roundabout.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like we need to bring roundabouts to the trails as well. Those workout stations, you see those pretty frequently along them, but I don't know how frequently people do.
Is there, the signalization, like, I think Dave Roberts talked about it seeing it in Germany, where there are sensors on the ground that sense when you're riding up and it automatically triggers the crossing. Do y'all know of any instances in the States that
Are you talking about
have
for
that?
a pedestrian hybrid beacon or for a traditional signal?
For pedestrian, or for pedestrian cyclists, like where they wouldn't have to stop, get off, and hit the button?
I thought ours was supposed to do that in Salem.
So the pedestrian hybrid beacon at Salem does do that, but it does require you to get up to the signal, because the technology, what we tried to do was put in advanced sensors so that as a person is riding, it sees them coming and then is green when they get there. But the technology is just not ready for it yet.
Yes.
It was turning green all the time, because it was having such a hard time distinguishing between a pedestrian and a cyclist. Because generally in the U.S., where that technology is used, it's just used in bike lanes.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not real good at distinguishing between a pedestrian and a cyclist. So what was happening was, as a pedestrian was coming, it would trigger it, and then it turned green, 30 seconds before the pedestrian would get there, and then they'd press the button and it turned green again.
Gotcha.
And the cars are just furious.
Piling up. Yeah.
So we had to turn it off. So it still does exist, but unfortunately it's just, it only works, essentially there's a zone that's right there by the button that, would catch somebody if they didn't know to use the button. It doesn't work as well as I'd like it to work, but it's there.
Cool.
And that's for the protected or the flashing?
That's for the pedestrian hybrid beacon.
Okay.
The similar technology does exist for the flashing beacon, the RRFB, which is the smaller, but it's not super reliable.
Yeah.
It's the sensors aren't as robust because they don't have a hardwired DC connection. It's solar powered. And so the cameras that they sell with those things, and we use a top of the line manufacturer, but the cameras that they sell with those things, they just don't do a very good job. So they always recommend putting in a button also. And the camera makes the thing, you have to have the camera, you have to have such a larger battery pack. It requires a larger solar panel, then you need a larger pole. It makes the whole thing twice as expensive. And when they say, well, you really need the button anyway, I'm like, well, dang it, I can put in 2 for the price of 1 if I don't have the camera, so I've never used it before.
Yeah.
But I'm willing to consider it.
Yeah.
The technology does exist. And it may be a situation where on a greenway where it's getting a lot more use, it might be worth it.
There's some they're using in Northwest Arkansas where you're on a trail and you're coming at a 90-degree angle to the road where you pop out right on the shoulder of the road.
Right.
And the beacon's already flashing whenever I get there.
Yeah.
And so that's interesting. I'm wondering how they're picking us. I've always wondered how they pick us up when we're in the woods until we literally we pop out and we go.
It's got to be I mean, we have the ability to buy sensors like that. You know, I think in a situation where it's important that sounds like a perfect place for it, where you really want to try to get a little bit of advanced detection. And if we had a situation like that here, I'd be motivated to use it. Other places where I've considered it, I think the best location to invest in technology like that is like what you're talking about, or if there's a situation where there are not lots of school children crossing, but just occasional school children crossing. And we do have some in Conway that I think could warrant it now. The issue is, most of the schools where we have these flashing beacons train the kids to use them. And so the kids tend to be pretty good about pressing the button because the teachers harp on it. And I've, talked to a lot of teachers telling them, please tell them to use the button. And most of the kids are pretty good at it. But if there is a situation where there's just occasional school children using a connection, but it's kind of far away from the school and, you can't really trust the kids to use it, that'd be another good location where you may want a camera.
Can't imagine school kids not wanting to play.
They always want
Yeah.
It seems like a lot of, I mean, couldn't you just use like a beam or even like the things that trigger like grocery stores? Aren't those well-established technology?
Then next you got trash cans, self-explanatory, bike
We're
racks.
already done, man.
Yeah. What's the linear parking?
Let me get to the bike share. That's something that we want to look at. That from a perspective of this transitioning from being recreational to a real transportation option, e-bike share is one of those things that is very attractive because it's we went on a study tour and riding back up the hill from down at that pizzeria at the Mill District down in Fayetteville back up to the Graduate. Finley is sitting there struggling.
Not struggling, thank you very much. I was doing fine.
You were doing great.
I was doing fine.
Your gears, you were properly geared and all of that. I hit the turbo mode in
2 beers in, I might add.
I don't know what you're talking about, but it was fantastic, and that was the moment where I realized e-bike is.
I think it's a great idea. I just don't know if there's the demand, and I mean, I think that's the real
Do we have any
run with
demands,
the Zax or
Yeah.
Well, that wasn't e-bikes now.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Those were not e-bikes. Why not just bikes? You want to go up the hill.
Well,
right?
to her point, we tried just bikes, and the company that was running it went bankrupt.
Well, we should try scooters then, because those guys definitely aren't going bankrupt anytime
Wasn't that
soon.
the pandemic?
That's true.
Partly?
Yeah,
I don't know.
Well,
We don't
I have a little,
scooters.
I have a little thought, right? So when you've got, I know I'm jumping ahead, your outdoor education kiosk, you've got that, and then you talked about Wi-Fi. Well, why don't you combine these 3 things together to have places, and you can even, if the city didn't want to do the e-bike things, what about putting in bids for private sectors to go in and bring their bikes and do that and have kind of a little business?
Yeah.
I mean, there's ways around that too.
Oh yeah, we didn't even have a snack bar, did we?
No.
I'm
I
like,
mean, yeah.
if we rented the space to somebody.
Like Collier does, and
Yeah.
where's that? Roger.
Yeah, where is it? It's Rogers, and you go up to.
There's like
Kohler,
a coffee shop.
There's a coffee shop.
I'm talking about Kohler.
I
yeah.
think already is like a little itty bitty. rent somebody like that, they
Yeah.
3 square feet.
But I mean, like the thing with the e-bike share, that is about using that as a way to extend, because there's people I think would be more willing to ride further for non-recreational trips. Like if I'm like, for instance, if I'm doing staff reports, going out to take photos, and I'm, in normal business attire, ain't no way I'm taking a bike. But
Especially in August.
But if there's an e-bike and I'm not really having to do a whole lot, it's
I
an
can see
option.
that.
So that's kind of the idea.
Whenever I talk to folks about commuting, the number
Go
one,
past that.
the number one concern they have is safety, which this route will take care of a lot of that. The number 2 thing is like the whole sweating and showers and stinking and all of that, so.
Yeah. Next are drinking fountains. Obviously, I think that there's more emphasis now these days with having something where you can fill a bottle rather than trying to drink out of a fountain.
I think you should add the ones that have a bowl near the ground so their pets can drink.
There was another image. I took that one out because I couldn't find one with the bottle,
Yeah.
the fountain, and the little doggy. The doggy.
That's really nice. I
We
mean,
did,
it
yeah,
could
he
be,
did, he brought that up.
it could be a cleaning issue, but I mean.
And aren't we connecting to the dog park?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Before you finish, is there any need, and since you brought up safety, for some sort of safety, I don't know, the lights you see in the parking lots in some places, and I don't know, are those directly connected to the police department?
We have, that's something that I think there was a discussion someone had at some point, and they said, I think it might have been Dave or somebody.
I think it was me. I think
It was
like,
you?
We should put these along the trails because like some of them are kind of remote, especially in the northeast area of the city.
I think I think it makes a lot of sense in places where it's far away, where God, if
Retail.
you've got Verizon in this town, you've got some dead zones.
Lower Street.
Yes.
Oh,
Oh.
really?
And yeah, and so I think there are certainly areas where I think
That
that
could be strategically placed.
Yeah.
Because I can't remember if it was Larry or Lawrence that told me this, or if it was somebody at Hendrix, but I think it was Hendrix that doesn't put them in anymore because the kids all have cell phones and maybe they should use cell phones. But that's one man's opinion. I think in most places people are just going to use their cell phone, but I agree that there are places where I think it would provide a sense of security.
Yeah. And then public restrooms, again, that would be, I think probably being strategic and trying to utilize ones at parks, but there might be others,
I think
spacing.
whenever you get closer to the retail areas, you want one maybe there.
Yeah, we don't really have public restrooms, and that's something, yeah.
I went to an amazing talk on public restrooms. I could go on.
Public restrooms, well.
And then, trees. So, your comment about shade. Should we have trees?
Who needs trees? Look at the
That's
next
what's great
page.
about the greenways.
And then
Shade trucks.
shade rest and outdoor education kiosks. Again, that's kind of like would be pretty infrequent, but somewhere to sit. Take a second. That obviously, the image of that's not applicable to Arkansas anyway. Trail art, things that make sort of the path interesting, that give you things to look at.
Do these, like, for example, I immediately, said, we don't need a grand entrance to this, but are these things that actually make the project more appealing to the grant committees if we put them in?
That's hard to say. I think,
Because I
obviously,
definitely think we should do anything that's going to get us the grant.
pretty pictures obviously are always help in any grant application, right? I mean, people don't tend to read, people tend to look, and so things that are visually appealing just naturally, draw the eye of the human. So that could be something. It obviously can indicate that we've given a lot of thought to this, and but the particulars of it, going through all of the technical components are much more important. And then linear park playground, that's something, at one time I went to, my friend was living in Colorado Springs, and it was like if you took suburban development to its logical end in the best way that it could be achieved. We're in this neighborhood, there was a sidewalk connection that went down to the trail. The trail then went along, there was a little playground area that was only accessible via the trail, and you had people come out there, and it was kind of a neat thing. I don't know how, it's an idea, I don't know how useful it would be in this particular instance. And then it connected to the school. This whole idea, you could live in a suburban lifestyle and still have some level of walkability, which I think would be appealing for a lot of people. So that's kind of what that is connected to. The free Wi-Fi, one of the components of this is trying to address issues of opportunity and equity, and so having places where let's say a kid could go and get access to Wi-Fi or something like that would be a safe place where people are coming. That was kind of one of the ideas with that. So, thank y'all so much. Thank y'all for your input. Thank you for filling these out. This project is gonna require everybody pulling together. We'll obviously be coming back with requests for letter of support with requisite entities that you all may be involved with. We'll also be wanting letters of support as well. We want as many folks as possible. We're really trying to make a big push for this with the grant. But to Finley's point, even if we don't end up winning the grant, I think this is going to be a transformative process for us, because this is an indication of a change, a commitment to a particular direction, and there are other grant funding opportunities. I mean, we're entering that 10-year period with MetroPlan, where MetroPlan over a 10-year period is going to get $110 million. $55 million of that is going to go to bike and pedestrian improvements. And so we're really good at making those grant applications, to the point that some other cities get mad at us. But we're going to try to get as much money as that as we can. So.
And I'll just say that the two of y'all have done a really, really great job of coordinating and bringing the planning and the engineering to make this a reality, because MetroPlan released the results of who received funding for the first round of, I think it's STGB, something like that, a couple weeks ago, and communities that don't have as robust bike ped plans as we do, or a network as robust as we do, won funds. So being as strong and being as thorough, and especially doing as much community engagement and involvement as Finley and James are doing, and the responsibility for us to let everyone else know, like neighbors and everyone at church and that kind of thing, makes everything that we're doing stronger. So, or that you guys specifically are doing day to day stronger and more competitive. So when it comes down to getting all this funding. So thank you guys.
Thank you.
All right. Well, we'll thank you both for being here. We'll adjourn and kind of talk about some other BPAP specific things, or I guess normal business things from the last couple of weeks. Via email, please email me and Mariah if you have questions. And I will get you minutes, because I know I did not do that. So it's my
Reminder, October, walk to school.
Yes, yeah, I've communicated with the school district, they've got the information, and they're gonna push it out.
Great.
Yeah, they don't want us to do volunteers or anything at the doors, they still want to restrict that, which totally respect that, but they said that they would get the word out.
Great.
Lots of stuff is happening from Oktoberfest is starting to come together.
Mm-hmm.
So watch for that.
Yep.
Lots of activities.
Jeremy and Marie and AJ came out a couple weeks ago and we filmed.
Great.
And the footage looks really great from what I've seen so far. And then we're me and Walter, the videographer, are gonna be filming Lori's next week. So it's all coming together. It looks great. Yeah.
That's so exciting. Thank you all for working on that. That's a big project.
That was fun. It was delicious.
Yeah. All right, meeting adjourned. Let's chit chat.
Thanks for your help. I'm gonna run.
Are you allergic to anything?
Oh.
Bringing you a pretty sweet pot roast next week.
Information.
Yeah, that was really good.
Good job.
There's a lot of sitting.
You been like,
Zooming.
yes, sir. You doing all right?